I moved into this apartment about 6 months ago. It's a small place on the edge of the city, the kind of building where no one really talks, but everyone minds their own business. It was exactly what I needed. I work from home as a freelance designer, so quiet was important to me. The rent was cheap, the area was safe, and the manager seemed nice enough. The first few weeks were peaceful. My days were spent working at my desk near the window, and my nights were quiet, just the hum of traffic from the main road. I didn't know any of my neighbors, except for a few faces I'd pass on the stairs. The only person I never met was the one who lived below me. I'd sometimes hear their TV faintly through the floor at night, or footsteps moving slowly across the room. It didn't bother me. Every apartment has its own sounds. Pipes creak, floors shift, walls hum. I got used to it pretty quickly. Most nights I'd stay up late, sketching or watching something online until I got tired. The place had an old, faint smell of dust and cleaning spray, but it felt safe, comfortable even. One thing I noticed early on was how still the hallway got after dark. The lights were dim and sometimes flickered. You could hear everything echo, the click of a door, a voice, even footsteps from the other end. My door faced the stairwell, and sometimes I'd hear someone walking up or down late at night. Slow, uneven steps like someone trying not to make noise. I'd listen until the sound faded, then go back to what I was doing. There wasn't anything strange about the place, not yet. Just a quiet building with quiet people. I never had visitors, and I liked it that way. It felt like my own small world, steady, predictable, safe. That all changed the night I found the first note under my door. The first note showed up on a Thursday morning. It was just a small piece of paper, folded once, lying on the floor by the door. I thought it was a flyer or something from management, but when I opened it, there were only a few words written in shaky handwriting. What time do you work? No name, no number. Just that question. I figured it was a mix-up, maybe meant for someone else. I crumpled it and threw it away. But a few days later, there was another one. This time it said, "Do you live alone?" That one made me stop. I stood there staring at it for a long time, thinking maybe someone was joking. I didn't have friends in the building, though, and I hadn't told anyone I lived alone. I looked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty and silent like always. Over the next week, the notes kept coming. One asked what time I went to bed. Another said they could hear me walking around at night. One night I stayed up late just to see if I could catch whoever was doing it. Around 2 a.m. I heard soft footsteps in the hallway, slow and careful, stopping right outside my door. I didn't move. I just sat there holding my breath. Then I heard the faint sound of paper sliding against the floor. When I opened the door a few minutes later, the hallway was empty. The note said, "You work late." I like that. The next morning I went downstairs and knocked on the door below mine. No answer. I could hear a faint hum from inside like a TV left on, but no movement. I asked the building manager about it later that day. He told me the unit had been empty for months. The tenant moved out in spring. Power shut off. No one since. That didn't make sense. I heard sounds from there almost every night. That weekend I stopped sleeping. Every little noise made me jump. Sometimes I'd wake up and swear I could hear someone walking under me, slow and steady, and always that faint hum. Then one night I found a new note. It said, "I'm right below you." I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning I told the manager everything. He looked uneasy but agreed to check the unit with maintenance. I followed them downstairs. When they unlocked the door, a cold draft came out, the kind that smells like old concrete and dust. The lights didn't work, so we used flashlights. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. The walls were bare. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust, untouched. It looked like no one had been there for a long time. But in the middle of the room there was something small and white on the floor. A folded piece of paper. The manager picked it up, looked at it for a second, then handed it to me. It said, "I like when you stay up late." That night I moved a chair in front of my door. But around 3 a.m. I still heard footsteps moving slowly below me. For a nurse who works the night shift, routine becomes everything. My life is a quiet rhythm of sleeping, while the city is awake and working while it sleeps. My condo on the 17th floor of a sterile downtown high-rise is my sanctuary. It's where I decompress. The hallways are always silent when I get home around 4 in the morning, the air still and cool from the building's central AC. It's a place where everyone keeps to themselves. You might share an elevator ride with a neighbor and exchange a polite nod, but that's about it. My unit is identical to all the others, a simple, One-bedroom box with a huge window overlooking the endless grid of city lights. That view used to bring me a sense of peace, a feeling of being separate from the chaos down below. The guy across the hall is named Mark. He's a business consultant or something. Always dressed in a suit, always polite but brief. A few weeks ago he caught me by the elevators and asked for a favor. He was heading to Europe for a month-long work trip and needed someone to water his plants. He seemed like a decent guy, so I agreed. He handed me his key, showed me the 3 sad-looking ferns on his windowsill, and said to help myself to anything in the fridge. The first week after he left was completely normal. I'd get home from a long shift, my feet aching, and let myself into his apartment. The air inside was always stagnant and silent. I'd water the plants, check that everything was locked up, and leave. His place was just like mine, only mirrored. The layout was the same, the window was the same. It was dark, empty, and perfectly still. Nothing felt out of place. It was just an empty apartment, and I was just a neighbor doing a favor. The silence of the building at that hour was a comfort, a sign that everything was as it should be. It started about a week after Mark left. I came home one morning exhausted and was fumbling for my keys when I saw it. A light clicked on in his living room. It was just for a second, a brief yellow glow that illuminated the window, and then it was gone. I froze, my keys halfway to the lock. My first thought was that I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me, after a 12-hour shift under harsh hospital lights. Maybe it was a reflection from a passing car on the street below. I shrugged it off, went inside and fell asleep. But a few nights later it happened again. This time I was wide awake, watching. The light switched on, stayed on for maybe 5 full seconds, and then switched off. There was no sound, just the sudden, deliberate light in an apartment that was supposed to be empty. The real fear didn't start until I saw the shadow. It was another hot, humid night, the kind where the air feels thick and heavy. I was standing at my own window, looking across the short distance to his, when the light flickered on, and this time something moved. A dark, human-shaped silhouette passed in front of the window. It wasn't fast. It moved with a slow, almost casual pace, and then it was gone. The light clicked off, plunging the room back into darkness. My blood ran cold. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to find a logical answer. A squatter? But how did they get in? The building has tight security. The next day I texted Mark. I made up some excuse about one of his plants looking a bit brown and asked if he'd had a friend stop by. His reply came almost instantly. Nope, just you. No one else has a key. Thanks for taking care of them. He was in Rome. I knew then that whatever was in that apartment wasn't supposed to be there. The hallway suddenly felt different. The flickering light overhead seemed to buzz louder, and the silence felt heavy, like it was hiding something. After a week of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I went down to building security, my heart pounding, and told the guard I was convinced a squatter was in Mark's apartment. He was skeptical, but he pulled up the security footage from the main exterior cameras. The angle was awkward, looking up at the 17th floor, but we found the timestamp from the night before. He zoomed in on Mark's window, the image grainy and washed out. Then the light flickered on, just like I said. The dark shape moved past the window. There, I said, pointing with a shaking finger. See? The guard squinted, fiddling with the controls to sharpen the image. The figure inside paused, turning slightly toward the window as if sensing it was being watched. The light caught its features for just a second. The guard slowly turned from the monitor to look at me, his face pale. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. It was me. I was wearing the same blue scrubs I had on that night. My hair was tied back the same way. The footage showed me clear as day, walking calmly through an apartment I had never entered. After my last place, all I wanted was quiet. I'm a freelance journalist, which is a nice way of saying I work insane hours from home, chasing deadlines at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I found this spot in an older 6-story building on the edge of the city. It wasn't fancy, the floors creaked, and the radiator hissed, but it was solid and, most importantly, cheap. My apartment 3B was a corner unit with thick walls that seemed to swallow sound. The first few weeks were perfect. I'd type away into the early hours, the only noise being the clack of my keyboard and the distant hum of traffic. The building was filled with older folks and a few students, people who kept to themselves. I never heard a peep from my neighbors. My desk is set up against the wall that separates my apartment from 3C. It's a long, unbroken stretch of plaster except for a single, old-fashioned metal vent near the floor. I never paid it much attention. It was just part of the building's ancient heating system, covered in layers of beige paint. I settled into a routine quickly. I'd work late, sleep until noon, and spend my days researching. The silence of the apartment was exactly what I needed to focus. It was peaceful, almost eerily so. I felt like I was the only person awake in the whole building at night. It was just me, my work, and the quiet hum of the old refrigerator. For a while, it was exactly the kind of isolated peace I was looking for. I could finally get my work done without hearing TVs blaring or couples arguing through paper-thin walls. It felt like I had finally found a place where I could just exist. The quiet didn't last. About a month in, I was working late on an article, probably around 3 a.m. when I first heard it. It was faint, so faint that I thought it was just the building settling. It sounded like a soft crying. I paused, took off my headphones, and listened. Nothing. I figured it was my imagination, maybe a TV from the apartment upstairs carrying down the pipes. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that. It was always the same, a low, muffled sobbing, the kind you can barely hear. Then a new sound was added to the mix, a woman's voice humming. It wasn't a tune I recognized, just a simple, repetitive lullaby. The humming was somehow worse than the crying. It felt more personal. I started trying to pinpoint the source. I'd press my ear against the ceiling, the floor, the walls. The sound was always weakest there. But when I crouched down by the old metal vent near my desk, it was clearer. The sounds were echoing from inside the ductwork. And they were definitely coming from the direction of 3C. One afternoon, I ran into my landlord, a tired-looking guy named Sal, in the lobby. I asked him casually, "Hey, do the people in 3C have a baby? I think I hear it sometimes through the vent." Sal gave me a strange look. 3C? No one's in 3C, kid. That unit's been empty for years. He explained that a major pipe had burst in there a long time ago, causing so much damage they had to gut the whole place. It was sealed off, just a concrete shell waiting for a full renovation that never came. My blood went cold. I went back upstairs, and that night, the crying started again, louder this time. Knowing the apartment was empty didn't make the sounds stop. It just made them impossible. Last night I couldn't take the humming anymore. I found a screwdriver in a kitchen drawer and got a flashlight. The old screws on the vent cover were painted over, and it took some real effort to get them to turn. But they finally came loose with a rusty groan. I pulled the metal cover away and aimed the flashlight beam into the darkness. The inside of the vent was thick with dust, like a tomb that hadn't been opened in decades. But something was there, tucked deep in the corner. It was an old baby monitor receiver, the plastic yellowed with age and caked in a layer of grime. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach drop. On the front of the device, a tiny red light was blinking, a steady, silent pulse in the dark. It was still on. I leaned closer and I could hear the faint, muffled crying coming directly from its tiny speaker. On the back, a small, faded label was just barely readable. It said, Unit 3C. Something in that sealed, empty apartment has been broadcasting for years. And I've been listening. The only question I have now is, what's on the other end? What's been listening back?